Recording in progress.
Okay, Michael, are you ready? I'm gonna have Donna comes up.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for attending today's webinar. This is Donna Chow, your host and moderator here at eLotus, the leading provider of continuing education for acupuncturists, where we have over 25 practice management courses from the top acupuncturists in the U.S., where they see over 50 patients a day. How many of you are just starting your practice? Can you type this into the chat room so our speaker can see and get a good feel of today's attendees? And while you're at it, how many of you are in your year 1 to 5? So you just started, you just fresh out of school, and it hasn't been 5 years yet. Just type newbie in the chat room. And which aspect of running a practice do you find most challenging that you would like to learn more about? Go ahead and type that into the chat room as well. That way we get a good feel of who our audience is, and that way we can cater the class towards you. All right, guys. So today's webinar is ABCs of Running a Practice, Part 1, presented by Michael Bison. It's part 1 of 2 parts where he will be talking about how to determine which style of practice is best for you. Improve your practice's efficiency by learning how to organize it, recognize how to track progress, and learn how to attract new patients and manage existing ones efficiently. Today's webinar will be from 9 to 6 p.m. Pacific time, and we will have 4 breaks. If you have not done so already, please do get a copy of your lecture notes from the Blue Course Access page in your account. And also, we will also have a lunch break, guys. I forgot to mention that. We won't keep you for the whole day, and the lunch is going to be 1 to 2 p.m. And for the chat room, if you guys would like to join the chat, and I hope you guys do, please set your chat preference to everyone so that everyone can see what you're typing. You're going to have to do this manually because for some reason, Zoom has it set where only the speaker and the staff can see what you're writing. So you'll have to change it up. So please do it right now. Set your chat preference to everyone. And if you see someone else saying that they're typing, but you don't really see a response, they probably have not changed their chat preference. So if you catch that, just let them know in the chat room and we can all help each other out. And if you have any questions for Michael during today's class, please type your questions that are specifically for him in the question box in your Zoom control panel. And finally, the quiz and the video replay. The quiz is for the CEUs. So you'll want to get CEUs for today's class. And just to let you guys know, for those of you who are California acupuncturists, you will only receive 5 CEUs for today's class because it falls into category 2, which is the practice management courses fall into category 2. And the most you can get for category 2 classes is 5 credits. So I know this class is approved for 8, and it is approved for 8 for other boards, but for California, they will only accept 5, so it's 5 maximum. Just letting you guys know, you will get more out of this class and then what's worth 5 credits. So we do hope that you stay. If not, then please let me know. If you don't want to do this class, please let me know right now. Send an email to info@elotus.org and let me know that you want out of this class because you want 8 CEUs for another class. That's okay. But I do highly recommend that you stay because Michael has a lot of great information. And this will help you grow your practice. Okay. So the quiz and the video replay, again, they'll be available tomorrow, and I'll let you guys know when they are ready. I'll send an email notification to you. Our speaker today is Michael Bison, and he is a healthcare entrepreneur with nearly 4 decades of experience and skill in acupuncture, traditional Chinese medicine, functional medicine, clinical exercise physiology, and nutrition. He owns and operates East West Healthcare, a 23-year-old acupuncture and wellness clinic with 3 locations in Wisconsin. All right, guys, let's go ahead and start today's class and welcome Michael Bison. Michael, will you please take over now and share your PowerPoint?
I will, thanks. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. All right, share my screen. There we go. I'm in this demographic that has to talk their way through this stuff. Sorry. There we go. All right. Well, welcome everybody. First of all, I want to thank Elotus and Tina for giving me this opportunity. I'm truly grateful for it. I've known Tina for, oh my goodness, 20 years probably. And I will talk about that relationship a little bit at some point, what Tina has meant to me as a professional, what John has meant to me as a professional. Appreciate all the support from the team there. I, again, set up with Sam, and I've known Sam for over 10 years, I think, too. Haven't seen him very much lately with everything being remote now. But in any case, I'm very, very grateful. I'm grateful for everyone who has come on to watch the webinar. This is a fairly new way of doing things for me, and I will commit to doing my best with this. We did that one-hour class on Wednesday. That went pretty well, and I do my team meetings on Zoom. But that's kind of the extent of my Zoom experience, especially when I'm the one talking. I've been on several for other things. But I appreciate everybody joining in on this. I will commit to you that I will do my best to provide something useful for everyone. This will be kind of a walk through the history of my experience as an acupuncturist, the things that I've seen in the, during that time. I have 15 years prior to being an acupuncturist in the medical field. So you total all that up and comes down to, it's probably over 40 years now. I don't look at the math, but in any case, I'm also a person who is rather observant of what's going on around, and I kind of pride myself on my ability to be introspective and self-aware also. And hopefully some of those things come out in the presentation, and I will try to share a number of those things with you. So in today's presentation, I just wanted to kind of run through what's going on here. And I'm sorry, but my voice is a little bit gravelly and a little bit hoarse. It's fall here in Wisconsin. It arrived right on schedule. Interestingly, it was 60 degrees overnight right up until fall hit, and then the temperatures immediately dropped to 40, and we still had windows open and those kinds of things. So I have a bit of congestion, so I do apologize for that. I've prepared with some throat lozenges and water here, so if you see me take a little break and quick pop a throat lozenge in my mouth, that'll be so I can keep going unabated, but please bear with that. And as far as the questions, please put them into the question box. If I can see that on my screen, I don't right now, but what I will do is I'll throw it back to the team at Lotus and ask them if there are questions periodically. And so we'll set aside time to answer some of those questions. But what I'm hoping to get through today is, first of all, the vital statistics. We did that a bit on the shorter version on Wednesday. I don't know if everybody had a chance to see that. I will cover that again, but kind of in abbreviated fashion, but just so that you get the gist of that. That leads into some patient procedures, and then moving into how do you organize treatments and treatment plans, document progress, things like that. I'll be speaking more in general terms of ideas of how to handle this rather than giving you specific templates for it. Just the ideas of what should be included and what your thought processes should be in setting those kinds of things up. We'll look at patients, attracting new ones, what your ideal patients would look like and why. Because when we attract patients, wouldn't it be nice if all the patients were our ideal patients instead of our nightmare patients? And I'll ask you to spend a little bit of time thinking about those kinds of things so that you can get the good vibes out there to get the types of patients that you want. I want to talk about what's happening in acupuncture, because there are certainly things happening, and I think we're all well aware of what's going on with other providers moving into our realm of acupuncture, sticking needles in under other guises, that's a word, whether it's dry needling or other professionals like chiropractors doing acupuncture and so on. Give you my thoughts on that, and I will give you some historical perspective on what is happening here, with the goal of helping you understand it to the point that you have some ideas about how to move forward to protect yourself and to thrive in an environment that is changing. The other thing that I do repeatedly in here, there's slides embedded in here, and I'm hoping, my thought is that you get these so that some of the links that I've put in here are available to you. You don't have to try to quick write them down on a screen that may, a screen that may be only up for, 30 seconds or something like that. But I'm calling them deep dive resources. They're the things that I've used to guide me when I wanted to understand something more deeply. I tend to read a lot of books. I love Audible. I do 50 to 60 books a year typically. Plus, as I said, I'm just interested in a lot of things. So I try to reference the things. This isn't Mike making stuff up of where am I getting this stuff from. So if you want to do the deeper dive, there will be deeper dive slides throughout the presentation so that you can access these resources yourself. And then if there's time today, I tried to gauge this, but I don't know what questions you're going to ask. And I don't know how rapidly the time will go by for me here. As I said, I'm not that experienced with this genre. Most of my teaching really has been more in, up to 3-hour blocks at a time. So this 8-hour block is a fairly challenging thing, but I've broken it down into segments. So we should be good. But if we have some time left, we can get into some things with compliance issues and that type of thing too. If that's something that you really want to get into, put it into, the chat and such, or the questions, and make sure that at least I can give it a cursory pass on that, or address it, so that you get something out of this. If not, it'll be on tomorrow's agenda. So hopefully a lot of you are staying for both days, but sometimes people aren't. So, and if there's anything in that I hope he really covers, and I think Donna said that, but I hope he really covers this, that, or the other thing, add those comments in there. So with all of that, when I write my name, it's always Michael. When I say my name, it's always Mike. So let's get into the presentation. And that's me. It looks pretty much like me, and I might be wearing the same shirt. Mom, maybe not. But I have a clinic in Appleton, Wisconsin is the primary, and I'm sitting in the basement at that clinic as we speak. I've got satellite clinics in Oshkosh and Fond du Lac, and it is East Wind Healthcare. Sorry, Donna. My good friend Reagan is East West Healthcare. Reagan Archibald. East Wind is my practice. And I do have a website at eastwindhealthcare.com. I thought I'd start out with telling you, kind of giving you a picture of who I am and what I'm about. I try very hard to be a person of integrity. So these things that I'm telling you, I think are truly representative of who I am and how I behave and what I do. I spend a lot of time thinking about those kinds of things. So my purpose for being an acupuncturist, for being on this planet, and for doing this presentation today is to help people become the best version of themselves so that they can live their life, that they can live the life they were meant to live. My hope is that something in this presentation helps you be a better version of yourself, so that you can turn that, as part of this is covered by my thing in the corner, and I know it's not covered for you. and that in turn you will impact others in a similar way. So if I paraphrase these a little bit, it's because part of it's covered. My focus in this presentation is both a how-to and a why. I tend to be a why person. You can tell me what to do. There are some people that you tell them what to do and they say, okay, and they go and do it. Other people will go, why? Why should I do that way? And I tend to be a why person, so I will be explaining whys quite a bit. The other thing is there's something called a Kolbe, which I'm going to talk about, and my Kolbe reflects that I'll talk about whys a lot too. But my focus is on how-tos and whys. The how-to should give you the methodology to do things, and the why allows you to understand so that you can do it your own way. That's part of the way I work with my patients. I work with my team this way. I like them to understand why, so that they don't want to do exactly what I'm telling them to do. They can do it their way. So why should you listen to me? What is it that I've had besides the 40 years of experience? And I do value that. I do value that in my mentors too. Anytime that I get somebody that is substantially older than I am or has more life experience than I am, I do tend to listen. And then I find conversely, a lot of the people that have given me a lot of the best ideas are substantially younger than I am. And sometimes I lament the fact that why do I have to take advice from someone who's 20 or 25 years younger than I am? This is self-evident, but you pointed out to me, oh my gosh, thank you so much. So I think we, respect our elders and appreciate that everybody has ways to teach us things. So why me? As we are all, I am unique. You are all unique. I'm unique. I've got 40 years of experience. The first time I got paid to put acupuncture needles in somebody was August 8th of 1998. By the way, and I got that person's chart right behind me. I've saved it for posterity. I've shredded a lot of charts since then. But that one I saved, and she didn't come back. So my patient management skills were not very good. They're coming out of the chute. So keep in mind that as I'm showing you things of why me and telling you what I'm about, that you don't have to be perfect by any means, that you can kind of suck at a lot of things. And if you're passionate and if you're persistent, and if you are willing to learn from your mistakes, you'll continue to move ahead. And 22 years from now or whatever, 24, it's 24. This is the 25th year, 24, 25 years from now, you'll be talking about and laughing about some of the mistakes you made earlier on. The other thing was Tina asked me to do this. And I want to touch on Tina because I have a lot of gratitude for her. And I'm going to tell you a quick story about Tina. I was looking for a method of practicing acupuncture. When I first got out of school in 1998, I felt really deficient in my herbal part. I'd been in a program that had sort of transitioned into an herbal program at the Midwest College of Oriental Medicine, the Racine campus. And they were kind of early neophytes in as far as getting that program in place. And I really felt like there were some deficiencies that I had coming into practice. And so I spent a lot of my initial years focusing on herbs. After about 5 years, I shifted over and started thinking more about acupuncture and better and more efficient ways to do things. And I came across Dr. Tan, Richard Tan, the late Dr. Tan, and I started to study with him, and that began to resonate with me. And I got to the point fairly quickly. I jumped in with both feet. Anytime I could get to a Dr. Tan seminar, I went. And in those days, there were no Zoom. There was no Zoom. And so I traveled around to see Dr. Tan, and I was to his office and all those kinds of things. So I was to the San Diego symposium, the Pacific College of Oriental Medicine symposium. And I met John there, and I had just begun to teach pharmacology at the acupuncture school that I had gone to in Midwest College in Racine. And John was gracious enough, and he had taught pharmacology for several years. And I had found everything he had written about that and, absorbed all of that. And he was gracious enough to spend about 3 or 4 hours with me talking about how do you teach pharmacology to acupuncture students. Well, so I was very grateful for John, and I met Tina through him. She worked the booth also. And it was at one of those Pacific College symposiums that I was looking for a place to eat. I was on a lunch break looking for a place to eat, and I came flying around the corner of this little cafe, and there was sitting Tina and a couple other of her staff at a table with a pizza in front of them. And she said to me, "Michael, sit down and have some pizza. We ordered too much." And I was like, no, that's fine. No, you sit down, you have some. So we sat down, and I shared with her where I was in my career at that point. And I said, I feel like I'm pretty good. Having worked with Dr. Tan, I feel like I'm pretty good as an acupuncturist, but as an herbalist, she said to me, or I said to her, I feel like a short order cook. Anytime somebody wants herbs, I got to look stuff up repeatedly. It takes me half an hour to come up with a formula for anything. It's like, and I don't really have that much of a feel for what the herbs are. I'm certainly by no means a chef. And she said to me, "Oh, you got to work with Jimmy." She said, "Do you know who Jimmy is?" I said, "Jimmy." And she said, "Yeah, Jimmy Chang. You know who that is?" And I said, "No." And she said, "Oh, you got to work with Jimmy." And so in that little short time where I was sharing pizza with her, she talked me quickly, it didn't take long, into working with Jimmy. And so that was the beginning of that. Now, as I got up from finishing that pizza to run back to, for the afternoon sessions at the symposium, she said, as I was leaving, "Oh, by the way," she says, "it's going to probably take you at least 2 years before you start to even understand what the heck he's talking about. It's fairly complicated stuff." And I'm like, "Oh, thank you so much, Tina. Now you got me really encouraged about all of this, and I'm going to have to study some more." But, that was probably 15 years ago. So Tina advises me well. So thank you very much, Tina. The other reason is I've made a lot of mistakes, and I've invested a lot of time and money, and I've survived. I'm still here. I still persist. So why me some more? Well, I've been fortunate, and I will show you how I got to this point, but I've done about 75,000 treatments in those 25 years. A lot of those I've done myself, but I've had associates that have worked for me too, and their treatments are included in there too. And I will explain all of that. That's about 1.3 million needles. So who the heck would figure that out? But I did. It's about $6 million I've collected. And the interesting part of that is while I do really, really well, and financially, I'm fine. But I have no idea where that $6 million went. That's, it's interesting when you look back, but yeah. But I do know this, that 1.5 million of that went to my employees. And I am grateful and honored to be able to help other people grow as individuals and put food on their own tables. In the beginning, helping people be better versions of themselves, that goes for my relationships with my employees too, and hopefully they would tell you that. And the last thing is that I've paid $240,000 and counting. I just was at a seminar with Reagan Archibald in Salt Lake City, and I joined what he calls his inner circle. And between that and the marketing commitments I just made, that number is going to surpass 300,000 by next year. So it just says you keep paying for education. My initial schooling, and I know most of you guys out there are very, very, very jealous of this, but my initial schooling, the contract I signed before that turned into the master's degree, was $18,000 at Midwest College. And then I ended up spending about 25,000. And so that I know that, you're moaning and, and jealous, but I've I've continued to spend money, and I value my education. And I think what I've learned since school, what you really learn in school is you get permission to embark on your acupuncture career and start your acupuncture practice. It is really what you learn after school that defines who you become as an acupuncturist and where you go with things from here. If there's one thing, one pearl that you can take away from this is not the end when you get your license, of your education process. It is just the beginning. And if you're willing to continue to learn, if you're willing to continue to invest in yourself, and you will hear this later in the presentation too, the sky is the limit. There is no limit to what you can do. It is an investment, and I know it hurts. And there are probably many people on here who are rolling their eyes at this and saying, I can't afford to pay my school loans back and that type of thing. I will tell you the reason that I committed $25,000 to Reagan and probably 130,000. So that's even more than I said. But if the marketing that I'm looking at goes well, there'll be $130,000 commitment to the marketing company over the next 12 months too. And I'll kind of explain that, but that's an investment. And I also know that fits within the numbers that my clinic is running right now. And I will tell you that. So the numbers that look really big to you right now with, if you are in debt or whatever, you can get out of that. You may have to be a little bit gutsy, but you can get out of that. I know people that have, and I have. So why me? Somebody once told me, you'll never be a successful acupuncturist. You don't stick with anything. Why do I even bring this up? Well, that was an ex-wife, by the way. Why do I bring this up? Because somebody probably told you something like that too. And if you let that bring you down, shame on you. I am sitting here in Appleton, Wisconsin, and my office is about 20 minutes south of 1260 Lombardi Avenue, which happens to be the home of the frozen tundra, Lambeau Field. Some of you are not football fans, but any football fan is going to know where that is. And they have a quarterback by the name of Aaron Rodgers. And if you don't know Aaron Rodgers, he's been the MVP 2 years in a row, and that's 4 times that he's won that. And the reason I bring him up is he has a very similar story. And we all have this, and we need to use this for motivation. He went to Cal, okay? And he was in a class, and he failed on a paper in that class, and there were a lot of athletes in the class. And the teacher, for whatever reasons, kind of singled him out. And a lot of people had a chance to repair the grade and redo the assignment. He didn't get that. He went in to see the teacher, and he said she wasn't ready for him. And he said, I'm not asking for any special treatment. I just know other people have gotten the opportunity to redo this paper, and I'd like the opportunity too. And she said, no. She says, you're an entitled athlete, and I don't like it. She said, you're never going to be successful in life. What are you going to do? What are you going to do with yourself? People are not going to keep, giving you special privileges. You're not going to get this. And she said, what are you going to do with your life? And he said, I'm going to play in the NFL. And she said, oh, you'll never play in the NFL. You'll never be successful. And his response was, watch me. So when people don't believe you, when they start to steal your dream, when they roll their eyes at what you're saying, just say, watch me. And you don't even need to say it out loud. You just say it to yourself. Don't give them the satisfaction. And then we've all had people who have said this kind of thing to us too. My wonderful aunt, who I love dearly, she let me live in her basement when I was going to college when my family moved away, said, isn't acupuncture kind of a fad? Maybe he should pick something a little bit more. And I have another athlete story about that, because my youth was spent in athletics. My motivation as a young adult was to be Aaron Rodgers, but I didn't quite get there. But I had aspirations to play professional baseball at one point. So there's another correlated story here. A classmate of mine who played third base and I played shortstop in high school has a son. And his son pursued the baseball dream to a fairly big level. And a year ago, he signed a contract with the New York Yankees that lasted 6 years. It's a $90 million contract. He used to play for the Colorado Rockies, and he now plays for the New York Yankees. His dad's name is Tom LeMahieu. His name is DJ LeMahieu. We Dutch people say it differently, but that's who that is. And so I posted on Tom's Facebook page, as he and I are friends, that's Dad. You know, you probably ought to talk to DJ. He really shouldn't, pursue these stupid, baseball pipe dreams that he's got there. He should probably get a real job. So, pursue your dreams and find humor in people that think that you're crazy. A quick history. I started my practice in 1998, and honestly, for you guys just getting started, I was afraid to let go of my day job. The thing that got me into acupuncture back then was I worked as an exercise scientist and exercise physiologist in cardiac rehabilitation. And I will tell you, I started in a YMCA in Milwaukee when I was right out of graduate school. I went to George Williams College and got a specialty in cardiac rehabilitation and didn't find a job. And I ended up at Central Branch YMCA, which is now a Marquette University dorm in downtown Milwaukee. In any case, I didn't get my dream job by any means, but I ended up coming up to Appleton, Wisconsin a year later to work in a cardiac rehabilitation program. And I got hooked up with a heart surgery group, that a hospital that was doing a lot of heart surgeries, and they did a lot of cardiac rehab. And for a small community in northern Wisconsin, Appleton's about 70,000. It is it does a lot, and it was pretty advanced, and so it was kind of a fortunate thing for me to get involved with, and I did really well. I was a rising star. I worked my way up through the ranks, and I got to the point where they said, well, we can't give you any more raises based on your, as an exercise physiologist. So we're going to have to, if you want a raise, you're going to have to go into management. So I did, and I charged right in there. And I was that rising star right up to the day I wasn't, and they fired me because I became a problem employee overnight. And, that's probably a lot of politics. And in retrospect, that's devastating. I'm telling you, man. So I was unemployed for a year. And, when I didn't get into soap operas, but, when your days revolved around when the next episode of David Jansen as the Fugitive was going to be on A&E, it's like you need some positive things happening in your life. But it was about a year of that, and it was beneficial because I don't want to go back there, and I can appreciate that when people get into their dark places, if I may call that, they can get out of that. And I find that I meet so many people who are at these downtrodden places in their life. And when I look at them, it's like, I don't see that you are what you are right now. That's not you. I see something else has much greater potential. I see all kinds of potential. And if I can be of help to you to find something, to light a fire in you, to spark a spark, to get your spark back, to get you going again. That's what I want to do. And so I was at that place. Well, I hung around in that space, in the bureaucracy of the healthcare system. I picked up a job at a hospital down the road, and interestingly, and I became a manager of cardiac rehabilitation at that point. And interestingly enough, that hospital ended up merging with the one that had just fired me, and I ended up having to work with the guy that fired me about 2 years later. Well, that lasted a couple of years, and then they ended up firing me too. It wasn't quite as much performance related as the initial. There was some reorganization that was happening and that type of thing. And so that blow was softened a little bit because of that. But then I had, after that, I had been working on an MBA, and they had offered me a grad assistantship. So I went and did that. and finished the grad assistantship. And I was kind of hanging out in academia, where I know a few people that have done that. Or hiding out is kind of the thing that I was doing. And then I took one more run at a job in the corporate bureaucratic world, and that was with Diabetes Treatment Centers of America at a hospital in the area where I grew up in Sheboygan, Wisconsin. I grew up in a little town near there called Oostburg, all Dutch people, as I kind of intimated earlier. But I ran a diabetes service there, and turns out that was a really bad contract that had very little chance of succeeding. I rode that contract out for about 1.5 or 2 years, and then they pulled the plug on that job. And so I'm sitting there going, what am I going to do? And it's 1995, and it was like, I had looked at becoming an acupuncturist a couple of years earlier, but that took 3 years of school, Oh my gosh, what a commitment. I don't want to do 3 years of school. Well, guess what? In 1995, when I lost that job, 3 years of school didn't look too bad. And so what I did was I made the commitment. I investigated the school, signed up, started working for a temporary service to put my way through school. And that was that. And I finished school in 1998 and started my practice. But I started with a day job, and that temporary staffing service was my day job. I used to teach people how to use Microsoft Word, Microsoft Excel. People that were doing secretarial things would come in. They had no idea how to use those things. They knew Word perfect. Anybody remember that? Yeah. And I had to cross-train them into Microsoft Word and all those kinds of things and make sure they were going to be very effective in the placements that they had and so on. And then I ended up teaching classes to small businesses as part of that job there too. I hung on to that day job. So those people that have a day job, I was running my acupuncture clinic a couple of days, 3 days a week from, I don't know, late in the afternoons to in the evenings. And that's how I got started. So I met John Chen, and I already told you that story. That was about 1998. Discovered Dr. Tan about 2006 and studied extensively with Dr. Tan in 2007. That conversation with Tina was in 2007. And then in 2008, I was tracking Jimmy down, and I was looking and he was going to be in Denver. And so I got plane tickets to Denver, but I was looking, it's like, I'm not going to fly from Wisconsin to Denver for one day. And this Bob Doan dude he's doing a conference there on something about treating 60 patients in a day. And it's like, I have no interest in treating 60 patients in a day. And, but I got to see Jimmy. And what the heck, it's not any, I forget it, I think it was not much more. I don't know how they set their fee structure up now, but I don't think it was much more to add Bob on Saturday or Bob on Sunday, whatever way it worked. And I thought, well, I'll go see both. And so I did that. And interestingly, Tina told me later that she had trouble getting Bob to be willing to teach, but he would do it if he could piggyback on Jimmy. So, because I said to Tina, it's like, why is Bob always piggybacked on Jimmy? Because I'd like to see some of your other things, but every time I want to see Jimmy, it's always Bob on the other day. And she just laughed and she said, I want Bob to teach, and he'll only teach if he can hang with Jimmy, because Jimmy is one of his mentors, and then Bob sits in the front row. And it's interesting, if you watch those videos, Jimmy's videos, there's a lot of questions being answered, and it's by the same voice. It's Bob sitting in the front row. And so these are interesting stories on the evolution of, at least I hope they're interesting, on the evolution of the groups of people that I've dealt with in the acupuncture profession. But anyway, Bob, I had no interest in treating 60 patients in a day. But Bob had said that, and I'm going to finish up that thought, but Bob had said, if you're going to run a successful acupuncture practice, there's 3 things you got to have. And I was like, okay, Bob, I'm ready for it. He said, you got to have a good method of doing your acupuncture. You got to get your treatments quick, and they got to be effective, and you got to have some quick methods, and you got to get needles in quickly. It's like, okay. And he said, personally, I really like Richard Tan. Dr. Tan is great. And I'm like, wow, Bob, we're in the same camp on that. I'm 1 for 1. That's good. I got that box checked. And then he said, and then you need to have a method of diagnosing and prescribing herbs that is quick and clean. And he said, Jimmy Chang is awesome. He said, and so Jimmy Chang is great. And I was like, that's 2 in a row. That's who I'm studying with. It's Jimmy Chang. I got 2 boxes checked. And Jimmy Chang's pulses are great. So, okay, all right, I'm 2 for 2. And then Bob said, and the third thing is you got to have someone that shows you how to run a business because you didn't learn that in school. And he said, and David Singer is a genius. And I was like, oh, I heard about David Singer, and I got conned into Amway. And if anybody's involved with that, I'm sorry, I don't mean to be, but I got conned into Amway, and I'm thinking David Singer's going to be Amway. He's going to make me do a whole bunch of stuff that I don't want to do, and face a whole bunch of stuff that I don't want to face. And so I'm going to have to like sell my soul to do the David Singer stuff. And I was going like, okay, no. And I was on no for a while. But I started to gain more appreciation and respect for Bob Doan. And my own practice had kind of flattened, and I'll show you the data on that in a few minutes, but my own practice had kind of flattened. And in 2009, 2 of my former pharmacology students from the Midwest College, and I at that point I'd been teaching 9 years, I was hearing about them, and they were treating 100 patients a week. And quite honestly, that was a bruise to my ego. I thought, how in the heck are they doing that? They're certainly not better acupuncturists than me. They've not been doing it as long. They're not more experienced than I am. They haven't been doing it as long. And quite honestly, I think, if I may say so myself, that my personality is a little bit, more vibrant than theirs. So what's this all about? And a few inquiries, and I found out they had one thing in common, and it was David Singer. And I said, damn, that guy again. And then another Bob seminar with Jimmy, and this was in the south side of Chicago, and he had the same message again with Dr. Tan, and all right. And then he added, he said, if it's the Scientology stuff that you're hearing, and if you Google David, the Scientology stuff pops up front and center. He's like, get over it. He said, he's Jewish too. And I'm like, well, okay, but whatever. He said, so just get over it. And David is very interesting. And I think the Jewish comment came from Bob, because David often talks about that. And that David has the ability to know good business deals and whatever. And it's like, okay, all right, I'm over it. Okay. And so I ended up going to there's the next one that Bob recommended, Dr. Tan, Fast and Effective, and so on and so on. And then, so I went to a David Singer seminar. There was a freebie in Chicago, or not, it wasn't a free, but it was $69 or something. So I'm like, okay, let me do this. So I go in there and I'm thinking, I'm not signing up for anything, because this Amway thing is still hanging there, right? Plus, I know this was going to be expensive. I'm going to go and take copious notes and get I'm just going to learn how to do this. I'm just going to steal all the ideas, and I'm going to do it myself. I'm not going to do it with them. Well, 20 minutes into the presentation, sitting in the front row with David. And by the way, when you did, he doesn't do these seminars anymore, but he did. You'd be in the front row, and he would makes you sit in the front row because all of his prospects are there in the front row. And he was telling me things, and it was like my jaw hit the table. It was like, this man so understands why people are coming in to see acupuncturists or practitioners of any type, and what they're looking for, and how to connect with them and how to communicate with them. So I got those slides in twice, I'll be darned. So no intention of joining, just taking copious notes. And then I found out I'm gonna have to drop $7,000 to join. But they gave you a choice of paying over a period of payments, and it would be more like 10,000, or you could pay it all at once and do 7. And I'm thinking I got room on my credit card and so on and so on. And so I ended up making the purchase and said, here's my card. Go ahead, let's do this. And I signed up. I did 8 years of David Singer, and I will say this about this man. I have heard other people say he is the worst thing that ever happened to acupuncture. And I'm like, okay, why? And I would say kind of the opposite, because I have not found anybody else, or at least at that time in the world of acupuncture, there was nobody else that was really teaching us, that was willing to teach acupuncturists how to do business, and how to look at what I'm going to describe to you as more transformational relationships rather than transactional relationships. And I'll describe that later. I have David's number on my cell phone, and I can pick it up and dial him, and he'll answer and talk to me. I know him very well. He knows me very well. After 8 years with him, I love that man. And when I've had my most trying moments as a provider, I have called him, and he's helped me through stuff when I'm dazed and confused and feeling threatened or feeling weak or feeling not knowing what I want to do. So I owe him a very huge debt of gratitude. Now, Reagan Archibald was in Singer in the West Coast group. I was in Chicago at the time. And a lot of you probably know of Reagan Archibald. I would say of all of the people that I have met with, I admire Reagan the most, and I have the most love and admiration for Reagan. By the way, about an hour and a half ago, Reagan wished me well from Italy. He's in Venice right now with his beautiful wife. And he said, your debut, Mike, you're going to rock it. Go. And he said, say hi to Donna and Tina for me. And so that's Reagan. He knew I was teaching. I picked his brain a bit because he had done this before. But I met Reagan in Chicago, and Reagan, a funny story with him is Reagan goes 1,000,000 miles an hour. He is a very high achiever, and he has accomplished more than any other acupuncturist that I've known. Like him or not like him, I love him. But and on that, finishing up my, and I'm sorry if I feel like I'm jumping around, but I'll connect the dots. Finishing up my acupuncture education, I made a trip to China in 1998. I had no intention of finding anybody, but I had gone into acupuncture school married, and that quote from the ex-wife was somebody who decided we should get divorced while I was in acupuncture school. I came out of acupuncture school divorced. I went to China single, and I met my wife. And I will tell you, Reagan says my wife scares him, because she keeps saying to me, why don't you be more like Reagan? And it's kind of like, because nobody can be like Reagan. Reagan is Reagan. He's by himself. He is in a universe of one. He's an avatar. He's a unicorn. But you can end up with people who your ambition level doesn't match. My wife and my ambition levels of ambition don't really match. But what happens is my ambition has grown because I've got, her shoe size imprinted in my behind, because she keeps kicking my butt when it's time to be more ambitious than I am to get up to the next level. So understand that behind every successful man, there's a good woman, or at least a good partner. If you're of a different sexual orientation, then there's another person behind there that's pushing things, and it's my wife that is the driving force behind my level of ambition, because I would have been content a long time ago if it hadn't been for her. There's 25 years of getting kicked in the butt and getting pushed forward now, and maybe not quite 25, 24, whatever. So I have that too. But I met Reagan at through David Singer. He was an attendee at the first seminar, and then Singer had him come in and teach a couple of the Chicago seminars when they'd split him up and did just acupuncture. Reagan talked me into joining this thing called PBS in 2014. And PBS stands for Physicians Business Solutions. And it is run by chiropractors, and it is a process of medical integration. And it was a costly thing to join, and I joined it. And then it became apparent I was one of probably about 6 to 10 acupuncturists that joined this group nationwide. And it was a pretty good model. And so, it looked really good and all those kinds of things. But there were two things that were problematic. One is that acupuncturists didn't quite fit in completely. It was a little bit of square peg, round hole. And two, the market shifted substantially where we're trying to do insurance-based things. But the idea was to hire a doctor, hire a nurse practitioner, hire health coaches and nurses and that type of thing, build a team, provide a whole series of services, some of which were medical, some of which were, alternative, and build a big portfolio of services, and then get big service packages, some of which were insurance reimbursed and some of which were reimbursed by the patient, make the value really high so that the patient's portion was relatively small and that people would buy into that. That's in a nutshell the idea. The problem is Obamacare was kicking in right at that time, and the insurance companies were not letting providers in network. And I was sitting there with a nurse practitioner that I just hired and a medical doctor that I just hired. And we weren't in network with anybody, and nobody was letting us in. So we weren't able to generate the revenue to cover that expense. And that was, I cried on David Singer's shoulder a little bit during that time. And we ran what we call red ink. And if you're in business, you're bleeding red ink means the numbers when they're negative are red. And so we bled red ink at that time. So PTSD, but good learning. And I would have to say at this point, I mentioned the PTSD, that did emotionally affect me and psychologically affect me for a few years. But I think at this point, I would have to say, and that's 8 years ago, that it is more of a learning at this point. So again, if you are in a position where you're feeling like you're getting the crap kicked out of you because of things that are happening in your world, that this can be a learning experience and a growth experience for you at some point. You can use it as a motivational factor for you. So keep that in mind. And I come back to PTSD because a lot of my patients are veterans, and most veterans have PTSD. And I find it very fascinating that it becomes crippling and debilitating for some people, and it becomes a springboard to bigger and better things for other people. And I really wish I knew why. I don't. I have some inklings and some suggestions, but we'll get into that more later. So ultimately, I circled out of the PBS. I pulled the plug on that and found out others had pulled the plug long before I did. I was a slow learner. And that's a theme that happens repeatedly, I think, throughout my adult life. I learn well and I get to high levels, but I don't learn very fast. Those of you, again, if that hits home with you, keep the faith, believe in yourself, you'll get there. Reagan ended up buying Singer's West Coast group after Singer kind of got out of that. Singer's still doing some things, but it's not very much, and it's mostly in regenerative medicine, stem cell kind of things. And that's a whole another set of issues, because the FDA came after the stem cells and shut a lot of that down. There's starting to be a resurgence of it now, but it's interesting. They're under the watchful eye, and the PBS guys are really under, the state of Georgia is after those guys. And I love those guys too. I think they're gonna survive the legal issues that they've got for themselves, but They're gutsy. And so when you see a perspective or a broad spectrum of people that are doing different things and are willing at different levels to take risks, and when the rules of the game aren't entirely defined, that they're willing to push over the edge, and there's leading edge and there's something called bleeding edge. And I will tell you that I think PBS is probably bleeding edge, and Steve and Brent, the guys that run that thing, are bleeding edge guys. And that whack-a-mole concept is that when you get successful enough, you tend to threaten people, and you threaten the status quo. And I will tell you that I think that Steve Peru and Brent Dedledge with PBS have threatened the status quo enough that they've got their attention and they've been singled out. You know, you got to have some thick skin kahunas to be willing to be on that bleeding edge, because you get beat up once in a while, and that's where they are. So I joined Reagan's Go Wellness group back in 2017, and I just got back from one from Salt Lake City, and well, actually we're in Park City, but last weekend, and every once in a while I look and it's a lot of money kind of thing, and then it turns out that there's something around the corner that motivates the heck out of me, that causes me to re-up and stay with it and stay with it and stay with it. And the last time that I'm probably Reagan's longest standing, one of his longest standing members. And he did say to me once publicly, as you know, I said something and I was like, Reagan, I paid you a lot of money through the years. And I said that publicly. And then he said, was it worth it? And it didn't take much. I said, every damn penny. And so again, this is encouragement. This is not just a boring story about Mike. At least I hope it's not. This is encouragement that the stories about me are making the point of invest in yourself. It's worth it. I didn't make $6 million because I knew what I was doing. I made $6 million because I listened to David Singer, and I listened to PBS, and I listened to Reagan Archibald. That's why, because they teach you how to leverage the influence that you have, the resources that you have, and move on to bigger and better things. Hopefully, so you can be a better version of yourself, and you can make other people better versions of themselves, if that's your hope. But to me, it's to have a positive impact on more people. And when you think about it, wouldn't you rather have a positive impact on 100 patients in a week versus 10? Really? And if you could have a more positive impact on 5 people who work with you and through you, and who you hear from patients, those people, whether it's the person scheduling them or the person sticking the needles in or the person who is dealing with their insurance issues for them, don't you love it? Or wouldn't you love to hear that the patient had a very positive experience and was very encouraged by their interaction with that person? And it's very gratifying to know that you're the person that put that that process together, that created this thing. And that's what I'll tell people when every once in a while, I'll walk up to a patient and it's like, I haven't done acupuncture in a couple of months. And they're looking, it's like, who the hell are you? It's like, I'm the guy that created this mess. So hopefully if you're having a positive experience, you can tell, you know, it was me. If this is a negative experience, I say, if it's a negative experience, I want to know. And I'm the person that you should complain to. I had a person once upon a time, I'm hearing busting the chops of my receptionist. And I will tell you, I didn't wait. I went up and I said, I know that you're frustrated. I know that you want this resolved. If you got a complaint, it's here. Leave her alone. I'm the one that made the decision. I'm the one that set this process up, these procedures up. You got a complaint, you bring it to me. Don't give her grief. She's just trying to get you scheduled. So again, if you're moving into the situation where you're creating this stuff, I think it's important that you realize those kinds of situations. And when you see that stuff happening, you recognize it and you step in immediately. Reagan's advice was to join Strategic Coach. And I had heard about Strategic Coach, and I also knew it was another level of investment. And so with Strategic Coach, you have to, and you will see a bunch of Strategic Coach in here, but Strategic Coach wants entrepreneurs who have achieved a certain level of success. They don't want entrepreneurs that are really floundering in their business. They want entrepreneurs that have reached a level of success in their business, that there's some stability there. They want to help people get to the next level. And when Reagan saw that in me about 3 years ago, he told me, you need to sign up for a Strategic Coach. And I'm like, all right. And then there were a couple other things I was considered. And I said, Reagan, option A, option B, or Strategic Coach? He said, Strategic Coach. And I said, got it. I had dawdled a little bit, but when Reagan was using these things called scorecards, and he helped us develop our own scorecard. And then I had been dabbling and checking out a few things online, and I checked out a few things from JJ Virgin. She had something called a summit. I forget what it was, but it was some type of summit. And I had inquired on it, and I started receiving emails from JJ Virgin. And I got a scorecard. And I looked at the scorecard, and I looked at Reagan's scorecard, and I was like, these damn things are the same thing. And I'm like, Reagan, are you ripping JJ Virgin off, or is she ripping off you? And he goes, what are you talking about? I said, I got a scorecard email from her the other day. And he says, oh, Strategic Coach. And I said, oh, JJ Virgin is in Strategic Coach. And I don't know if you know that name, but she wrote the Virgin Diet and the Sugar Impact Diet. And she's got kind of an empire built on podcasting and so on and so on. She's quite famous. She is also a nice looking young woman, aging well. And she's, I think, I got to be nice, I think she's still in her 40s. I don't know, but she looks very, very good. She's very fit, and she's built a nice empire for herself. And I knew she was, her books are New York Times bestsellers. And I thought, well, that's interesting. JJ Virgin is in that group. And I became a fan of the Bulletproof Diet and Dave Asprey, who wrote Bulletproof Diet. And I'm doing all my bulletproof stuff. And I still do, by the way. I got good, I'm nice and full of bulletproof coffee. So if we have to take an unscheduled break, that would be why. But Dave Asprey, and it's like, he's in the group. Really? And so it's like, there's a guy that's got this thing called Genius Network. He's by the name of Joe Polish. He's in the group, and he does podcasts with Dan Sullivan. There's another guy by the name of Peter Diamandis who does, he started the Singularity University in Europe. And he was in on the Longevity Institute, and he was in on mining asteroids. And he's in he's written a couple of books with, and one of the last ones with Tony Robbins. And Peter Diamandis is in the group, and he's doing podcasts regularly with Dan Sullivan. And I'm following all these people and just saying, I'm figuring these people are in another universe. They still kind of are, but I'm closer to that universe than I was before. But I'm thinking, if I can be in the room with these people, what the heck am I waiting for? I got to sign up for Strategic Coach. And so I will kind of explain that to you. And so it's interesting throughout the weekend, but it's interesting that you go to Strategic Coach and you think you need help from other acupuncturists. It's like, there are no other acupuncturists in Strategic Coach except for Reagan and I. And I think Gene Healy, another guy I know through Reagan, is going to come into Strategic Coach too, but he's kind of on hold right now, I think. So it's like, so how am I going to get advice? And it's like, I get advice from people that, run cleaning services. I get advice from people who run restaurants. I get advice from small business people who are financial planners, who are insurance people, who are lawyers, who are, everybody has a different small business, but we're all entrepreneurs and we all have the same things. And as entrepreneurs, your employees don't understand you, and well, they sort of kind of, but it's not the same. And your patients don't understand you. Your family doesn't really understand that entrepreneurial stuff. Other entrepreneurs understand it. And it's really good to be part of a group of people that understand small business people and entrepreneurs. And I know small business people are entrepreneurs, but a lot of them are. And we'll go into that too. So I joined that, and boy, oh boy, I have to say, I love Reagan the most, and he's the one who told me to go to Strategic Coach, but Strategic Coach is, wow, that is just powerful, powerful stuff. And if you're interested in that, just to give you a caveat, you got to generate about 200,000 in revenue to qualify to sit down on Strategic Coach. However, I will tell you this, for your deeper dive, if you Google those names, Strategic Coach Dan Sullivan, you will find a boatload of stuff that is available to you. You don't have to join to access it. So there's many, 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 many nuggets, and Dan is awesome. So additional history, 15 years in cardiac rehabilitation and health promotion. I learned from nurses in cardiac rehabilitation that recovery from chronic illness is a process. And that is the one thing I brought to the table when my first day as an acupuncturist is I understood people aren't going to get better in one treatment. And that was beneficial. And I'm not sure that all acupuncturists understand that. I work with a functional medicine doctor in my Fond du Lac office. I still leave space from him. Forum just bought him. I don't know if people have heard of Forum, but Forum is a growing group of functional medicine doctors who are buying up practices to create a group that practices nationwide. I'm not sure what their whole intention is, but that's them. And I've been with Steve Moress for 23 years out of the the Fond du Lac office. And I do appreciate that relationship too. I worked in a pain clinic that went bankrupt, and the owner was prosecuted for fraud, which basically led me to, first of all, an interview with DHSS, which was very unpleasant. He made it clear that he wasn't interested in me, but he was interested in what I understood about what was happening around me. And they thought that she was billing Medicare for trigger point injections and not really doing them. It would be acupuncture and then bill it out as trigger point injections, which would be very fraudulent. Well, that's not what was happening, not what she was doing. And the DHSS stuff went away, but the suspicion of fraud screwed up her cash flow streams, and she ended up going bankrupt. And then she pulled a really stupid thing going bankrupt, where she sold me a dozen massage tables, and which I in turn turned around and sold, because I was teaching at the acupuncture school at the time. And, young upcoming acupuncturists could always use a massage table at a good price, right? And so she had quality tables, and I sold them all. And then she also sold her X-ray equipment that she had to the chiropractor that was trying to help her manage her business and stay afloat. And then when she was, what's that called when you're under oath? They said that your inventory, your physical inventory and the inventory on paper doesn't match. There's stuff missing. Did you sell or, whatever, dispose of any equipment since you filed this? And she said, no, someone must have stolen it. Well, she sold it. When they found me, they said, how'd you pay for that? And I said, wrote a check. And who'd you write the check to? And it was like, to her. And they said, you got that check? And she ended up being prosecuted for bank fraud for that. So you learn things about what not to do. The biggest thing I can say about that is it's not about the bank fraud. It's about a person who lost their integrity. It was about watching what she did in her practice with trigger point injections, with acupuncture, with massage therapy. It was a very, very nice idea with a very bad, maybe not a bad business plan, a poor business plan, or maybe just really poor explanation by somebody who just lacked integrity. So, and got herself into a bunch of hot water. So in any case, you learn, right? Learn from other people's mistakes. I don't want to make any mistakes like that. I look terrible in orange. I don't ever want to be there. I want to talk for a second about reality before we get into our first break. Is coming up pretty quick, I think. We all think we know reality. And having just come through COVID is a reality, right? But each of us has our own personal experience with COVID, especially since we were locked up for some of that time, right? So the only reality that we know is the one we have experienced. Now, I'm not trying to get all philosophical on you. It's more practical. It really is, because when people start telling you about reality and what's real and what's just happened and all those kinds of things, you have to understand that what's coming from them is their reality, because the only reality that we can experience, the only reality possible for us to experience, is the one that we experience. It's the one that comes through our eyes, our senses, our ears, things we hear, things we see primarily, but then things we feel, the kinesthetic and the emotions that we have, and then the meaning that we attach to it. And the meaning that we attach to it comes from the meaning that we've attached to things throughout our lives. It's the story we tell, it's the interpretation that we have. So one of the things that I've really, really learned is that reality is what I make it. Okay? You're getting weird, Mike, and that's getting too philosophical. Not really, because I want to bring this back to a very practical place. Since we're limited to being in one space at one period of time, our version of reality is limited. So the COVID-19 reality, we all went through it, but it certainly was not the same for everyone. We're not all in the same boat. People have said that we're all in the same boat. It's like, no, we're not. We're in the same storm, but we all have different boats. I think someone posted that online, and I saw that on Facebook or something. But I thought that captures it. It really is. Depending on your resources, some people do not have the emotional resources to weather that storm, and some people do. And you get deeply into that, but just on the surface, if you just understand that, it helps to create a frame of reference to realize that our reality is really just our frame of reference. We all tend to focus on our pre-existing beliefs. See, I knew, and remember these things, because as I go through the presentation throughout the next 2 days, these things are going to crop up, and it's going to be like, yeah, see, there that is. So especially COVID, everybody's got their pre-existing beliefs, and then, see, this just proves that. And it's like, well, maybe it does, but that's your reality, right? So in our search to make sense of things, we tend to become more judgmental at times. So keep that in mind. So your acupuncture reality. So we have COVID reality. Let's set that aside, right? You're in the same ocean. We're all in the same ocean as acupuncturists, right? But we all have different boats. We all have different resources available to us to move forward. And sometimes the biggest limitations that we have would be ourselves. Our reality of acupuncture world is determined by what we observe and what meaning, and the meaning that we attach. Meaning is covered up, everything but ME. Sorry, I had to remember that one. Okay, the meaning that we attach to it. All right. Your eyes only see, and this is repeated. This is a Dan Sullivan repeated by Reagan, now being repeated by me. Your eyes can only see, and your ears can only hear what you're paying attention to. Your eyes can only see, and your ears can only hear what you're paying attention to. Dan Sullivan. So what about your your acupuncture reality? My take, and hopefully it's minimal. There are a lot of acupuncturists that are struggling. Maybe that's just the loudest voices that are online, that are on social media, the loudest complaining, the loudest wailing and moaning and gnashing of teeth, as my son's middle school teacher used to say. Conversely, I've seen acupuncturists thrive. And Reagan probably thrives more than anybody that I know. And partly because he chooses to, he wants to, okay? Dan Sullivan thrives. Dan Sullivan surrounds himself with people who thrive, okay? So if you want to thrive, there are certain things that you are going to have to understand about the way that you're looking at things, the risks that you take, and so on. I've seen acupuncturists frustrated, depressed. It breaks my heart when I hear an acupuncturist quit. I just can't. I got books for sale. Anybody want to buy them? I can't, you know. I taught 250 of you. I know that not a lot of them didn't get started. I know that a lot of them are frustrated. I have one or two that argue with me on social media on a regular basis and they never became acupuncturists. They were in my class. They paid for the school. They didn't become acupuncturists. And to me, that is sad. That is so sad, because the other thing that I see is, in some senses, I see frustration and anger continuing in their personalities, and it's unnecessary. Quit, never get started. You need to get acupuncture to work for you, and you need to it should be get. No, I'm sorry, part of it's covered up again. So you need to get the fulfillment that you're looking for out of your acupuncture practice. You deserve this. My goal is to help you get that. So if you were looking for step 1, do this, step 2, do this, step 3, do this, first thing that has to change is your mind. This is true of our patients, by the way, too. It's my goal this weekend to give you something, maybe a little, maybe a lot, but something that helps you along your journey to get to a better place. We deserve to thrive. We all have a story. Think about yours, because guess what? When you start telling your story, like I've told you mine, everybody likes to hear of trials and tribulations and triumph over them, right? All the great stories are that. So you need to refine your story, because your patients want to hear that. The people that you interview for positions want to hear that, because we are attracted to people that have overcome. And if you think about this, and this is a Dan Sullivan, he's written a book about this called The 4 C's. And if you look online, it's there. I got this online. The 4 C's. In order for you to be successful, and if you think back to every situation that you've been in where you've been challenged, you sucked it up and you went through it and you succeeded, that you went through this 4C process. 1, you need to commit to it. The level of commitment comes first. You have to be committed. If I'd have known how hard it was to get my wife here from China after I met her, what that process was going to be, I would have never done it, but I was foolish. If I would have known how hard getting my master's degree in exercise physiology would be before I started, I never would have started. So sometimes naivete is good. It's good we don't know what we're up against. It's good that we're naive. I'm glad my son is who's at the University of Arizona in undergrad, is going pre-med and going to go to medical school. If he really knew everything that was in front of him, he might not want to do it. And he might change his mind yet, but I'm just waiting, because when he gets to that point that he feels the indoctrination of the medical system, I'm going to be whispering in his other ear, now there's some things I would like you to know about the system that you've been indoctrinated into and the way the medicine is practiced. Know this and know this and know this. And if you really want to help people, know this other side of things. Hopefully you can find a way to combine all this and be even more helpful than a lot of other people have. But commitment to the process is the first thing. You got to be all in. I was all in on going to grad school the first time. I borrowed money from my grandfather. I was like, I can't go back to him and say I dropped out. Okay. I got a D- on the first test in exercise physiology, or not a D, a D on the first test in exercise physiology. And that was the major of the program. I got called into the owner's office. I was committed. And so then we get into part two. I had to have courage. I had to tell that not the owner, the director, you need commitment first, courage. I had to go to that director, and he said to me, and I was married at this time. He said to me, I was commuting to school on Monday morning and going back on Friday night. You can't go home anymore on the weekends. And I'm like, it was kind of a laugh. And I'm like, I'm 24 years old and I'm married. You can't tell me what I can and can't do with my personal time. Come on, man. And I'm like, and I was kind of like, I didn't really say that, I just kind of, where's that coming from in my mind, And then I'm like, okay, he's worried about me failing. And I'm representing his program. There's only like 20 students in this program. He doesn't want me to fail. All right. This won't happen again. Commitment. This won't happen again. Why? Because I underestimated what this was going to take, and I will put forth the effort and then some from this point forward. So, courage. The second C is courage. You got to have courage, because guess what's going to happen? Shortly after you've committed to it, you're going to go, holy crap. What the hell did I just do? Right? You've been there. Every single one of you have been there. What did I get myself into? Okay. So courage. Courage is not having that feeling. Everybody has fear. It's human beings. As human beings, we're designed to have fear. We have that reptilian brain and the amygdala that says, get out of here. This is dangerous. Okay. It's protecting. That's what fear is. Courage is not the absence of fear. And we know in Chinese medicine, what happens when you have fear, you get that downward surge of energy, right? And that's called peeing in your pants. Courage is not peeing in your pants. Courage is doing what's necessary, what needs to be done with wet pants. You peed in your pants. Doesn't matter. Do it. Get it done. That is the second step. And guess what happens after you do that? What happens is you develop a skill that you didn't have before, or you expand on a skill that you've had before. It expands your capability. And after you've expanded your capability, guess what? You say, damn, I did pretty good. I'm confident. And isn't that great that we go through that, right? The only problem is, guess what? The cycle repeats. And it keeps repeating over and over and over again, right? And I'll give you a quick insight into Dan Sullivan. He says, entrepreneurs should never retire. And I will go into greater detail with that, because here's what he sees with the 4 C's. When we reach a certain level, and I know people in my life, and you probably do too, that have said, enough of these cycles. I can't handle this fear stuff and uncertainty and having to put myself in uncomfortable situations to develop my capabilities and my confidence anymore. I just want my nice, simple life the way it is. Okay. He basically teaches you that it's like, well, you're gonna stand still for the rest of your life. And you've probably just shortened it, because you're basically sending the message to the universe, I'm done with these parts. You can come and recycle them now. Okay. So we want to be in a position that we have complete command of those retirement years, but not necessarily retire. So hopefully that changes your mind a little bit too. So then you get to do it all over again. Knowing who you are and why you are on the particular path you're on makes you better at life. It makes you more useful to others. And to me, that's the reason that we're here. It isn't to go live in a cave somewhere. It is to figure out how to be more useful to other people. Your journey usually involves running away from something. Think about this. I would guess that if we took took a poll that almost everybody on here became an acupuncturist because they were running away from something. So with my story, what do you think I was running away from? I got fired 3 times in 5 years. Bureaucracy sucked for me. Corporate America sucked for me. And I'll explain later why that was. When you start to see my personality, I don't fit in that world. That's not my skill set. Bureaucracy is a different skill set than being an entrepreneur is. And one of the reasons I've decided to push this acupuncture practice stuff to being all the way to being an entrepreneur is I understand that. And I understand that who I am fits much better in the world of entrepreneurism than it does in the corporate world of corporate structure. I ran away in the beginning to run away. The vulnerability of getting fired, I hated that. It's like as stressful as hell. You lose sleep at night because you could get fired the next day. And it, you know, some of it seems like, well, I'm getting fired because I just suck. And don't you know that we all go there? You know, when my friend got fired, completely different realm. We were friends because our kids did stuff together. And it was like, you know what? And I always admired this guy. He was high level IT. I reached out to him because I knew how he felt. And I knew that he sucked right now. That's how he felt about himself. I suck. And it's like, I can't do anything. I'm going to lose my house. I'm going to lose my, and it's like, I know we all go there when that stuff happens, we all go there. I reached out to him and I stayed in touch with him mostly virtually through that process. And then he ended up coming back to me and was a huge help with PPP because he ended up working at the bank, doing the IT at the bank that I got my PPP through. And I never even knew until I bitched about the whole PPP process to him. And then I didn't know he was an insider, and he got a person from the inside to reach out to me and help me with my PPP. So it's interesting, but being in business for myself, I can't read that one, but you can. Running to something as your journey is refined is what has to happen. So I don't know if you can hear it. I'm not running away from being fired anymore. I'm not running away from the insecurity of somebody taking my livelihood away. I'm not running away from, and this is probably more true of men than it is of women, is that I identify with my job. It really, my identity is really ingrained in that. When you take that away from me, you're taking my identity away from me. I'm not running away from the fear of that anymore. So what happens is you evolve to from running away to running to something. And you kind of get stuck sometimes. At least I did. It's like, well, what am I running to? I got to have a bigger, better future. What the hell does that look like? Running to what? I got to have it. And for me, it's evolved through time. And Dan Sullivan puts it great. Dan Sullivan is 78 years old, and he's got a 25-year plan. And you know what he says about his 25-year plan? He said, he doesn't use the word pump, but he's pumped. He's excited. Why? Because I get to spend the next 25 years working with and talking to really, really interesting people. I just don't know who they are yet. I don't know who they are yet. I said that so fast. I don't want you to miss out on what that was. In other words, I'm going to meet them. That's what excites me. And so when I join groups like Strategic Coach, I'm going off away from all of my acupuncture buddies. I'm going to meet new people who I don't know. And a lot of them are going to be younger than me, which is part of what I need because I'm getting a little long in the tooth. And when everybody around you starts dying and retiring and those kinds of things, and that is happening within my, my circle, that starts to shift your focus onto your past rather than your future. If you hang with younger people who have bigger ideas, then you keep focusing on the future. That's what's necessary to keep going and to be young. So your journey evolves to running to something as your purpose for your journey becomes more refined. Away from isn't enough anymore. You need a bigger why. Think of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We start in this, it's like, why are we doing what we're doing? We start out at this physiological needs level, and safety needs level. So here I'm at the safety needs level. I can't be fired from my job. And so I was really operating there. So then we get into love and belonging, friendship and intimacy, family, a sense of connection, sense of connection through your practice, through the, the helping people in the outside world, and then esteem, respect, self-esteem, status, recognition, strength, freedom, and then self-actualization. Who do you want to become? What do you want to do? Acupuncture is your vehicle to express this, okay? So this is just hopefully more. Some of you, it might have been a job. And in the beginning, I got myself educated to get a job, to be stable, to not, at least when I have my job, my patients aren't going to fire me all at once. So my safety need for not being fired arbitrarily or otherwise was met because I had 10 bosses, 15, 20 bosses instead of just one, right? And what are the chances that 20 people are going to fire you at once? Slim and none. If you got 3 or 4, there might be a trend. You might have to say, hey, I bet maybe have to change something here, but not 20. And not when the pool starts to get bigger. I'm talking about my acupuncture patients. Not when it starts to get bigger, then you have time to adjust. If somebody says, hey, you're doing this and I don't like it, you're talking about that and I don't like it. It's like, okay, I got time to adjust. So if you're offending people, you can adjust. Okay. So I think, let me hit this. Thinking about your thinking. So first assignment, you're going to go on a break pretty quick. Thinking about your thinking. This is another Dan Sullivan idea. We need to think about how we think and what we're thinking. What have you been running away from? Do you have an idea of what you're running to yet? Think about those things. There is power in having these answers. That's why I tell you this. And we're going to take is it a 15-minute break? Do you guys take over again, or what are we doing? Help me out here, Donna, Sam.
Oh, we could take a break, and then you can take a 15-minute rest, and then we take over your PowerPoint for like 10 minutes.
Okay, let's do it.
All right, see you in a bit.
Sounds good. Sam, do I need to stop sharing or not?
No worry, I take that over from here.
Okay, so they can't see me right now, or
They still see you.
Oh, should I put my mute on?
Yeah, you can mute your mic if you like.
Okay.
And then you could, stop the video sharing if you like. Then you can turn it back on when we start again.
Okay.
Recording stopped.